Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, here in Santa Clara, California at 9th Cloud Expo. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're following the Day 4 keynote out there on the World Wide Web. We want to end 9th Cloud Expo the same way we began it, infused with enthusiasm, full of information and optimism, but we want to anchor it in reality. So we need real-world use cases. Where better to look for that than in the federal sector? Nothing could be more real than what we're going to hear about from Jill Singer, CIO of the National Reconnaissance Office. Let's give her a warm round of applause, please. And let's listen to what she has to tell us about cloud computing.
Great.
Thank you, Jill.
Yes, thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for the welcome, everybody. Hey, before we get started this morning, there's actually a particular group of folks that we need to thank. And that is Jeremy Geelan and the entire show management crew. So if you'll join me really quick in thanking them. Yeah. They work incredibly hard to bring us the Cloud Expos, and I'm glad that you're all here to enjoy it. As he noted, I am the CIO for the National Reconnaissance Office. Some of you probably know who we are. Many of you probably don't know who we are. And the easiest way for me to describe ourselves and to have you understand the world in which I live is to actually show you a video. So you're going to see a quick 2 minutes of exactly what the NRO is all about. You were able to take away, we are a member of the intelligence community and a member of the Department of Defense. Our primary job is to put up spy satellites for the United States and operate those satellites to the benefit of our nation. Let me move into Cloud Expo now. I'll give it just 1 second, it's finishing up. I have been privileged to be part of the Cloud Expo series for a couple of years now. Some of the things that I will show you were from the New York City Cloud Expo in June of this year. But let me start with the Gartner Hype Curve so you can watch with me where we've been on this cloud transformation. The word cloud computing was coined in 2007, so that's just a scant 4 years ago. And you look at the expo floor we have here today, and you look at the hype around cloud computing, it's phenomenal that it is such a new term and such a new industry. It hit the Gartner Hype Curve in 2008, in this spot where you can see, moving up to the peak of inflated expectations. In 2009, it topped that peak. And then in 2010, something happened. It split. And we now have public cloud and private cloud. Private cloud is the official NIST definition. You may also hear private cloud called enterprise cloud computing. And they both showed up, and you notice that between 2009 and 2010, the public cloud offering didn't really drop off the top of that peak. Here we are, latest data from Gartner Group in 2011. Private cloud is inching ever closer to public cloud. They have fallen just slightly off of the top of the peak of inflated expectations, which I will use as a moment to warn us all in the IT industry that we're probably going to go through that trough of disillusionment. Most things do. Cloud may surprise us and push through it very, very quickly. But as IT professionals, you need to be prepared, and you need to prepare your companies and your executives for walking through that trough of disillusionment. When cloud, as the next generation of IT architecture, doesn't necessarily deliver everything you said it would, as fast as you said it was, and cheaply as you said it would, just be prepared to work through that. I'm hoping that we'll see it hit the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity pretty quickly and stay there for a good long while, like some of our past IT architectures have. In June, I answered the question for all of us, that is cloud computing for real? And I answered it emphatically, yes, it is for real. And again, this expo is evidence of that. I talked about 3 key features that demonstrated the adoption. One was CIO interest in general, all around the place, whether you're a federal agency, state and local agency, or a company, huge enterprise or small enterprise. There's a lot of interest by CIOs on cloud computing. We obviously have a lot of vendor interest. And on the federal space, there is more interest in cloud computing on the federal space than I have seen in any architecture in the past 30 years in terms of quick, rapid adoption with cloud. In October of 2010, I noted that 70% of federal CIOs had something going on in cloud. That number has continued to grow since then. Not to mention we've had mandates from the former federal CIO, Vivek Kundra, that said it's a cloud-first policy for the federal government. There's still some mistakes that you need to avoid when you're moving to cloud. I'll highlight those in a moment. If you have an interest in seeing a write-up of what I said in June, you can go to this website and you can find that, and a couple of other things as well. So why is everybody so interested in cloud? What makes it so popular? This survey from December of 2010, so not yet a year old, actually tells us that there are really 4 big drivers, or 3 big drivers to it. It's all about OpEx and CapEx, so cost is one. It's about being able to deliver faster on the value for your mission. And it's also being able to deliver better capabilities for your company or better capabilities for your organization. To summarize it, cloud actually allows us to be faster, better, and cheaper. In 2009, when I first talked about cloud computing, I used faster, better, cheaper, and safer. Now, the safer question, from a security perspective, still looms with us today. I do believe it's there, but what you can see from this survey, which is only about 6 weeks old, about the federal space, is that the #1 issue that we all still have is security in the cloud. It's combined with 2 other big issues. There are several on this slide, but it's combined with 2 other big issues of culture and budget. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through those 3 issues and give you ways to manage through them. So we'll start with security, we'll move to culture, and the bulk of this presentation will be on culture. We'll go to the budget, and then I'm going to actually tell you how we're doing the cloud implementation at the National Reconnaissance Office. When you look at security, I just recently co-authored a paper with Jamie DeSantos, the CEO and president of Terramark Federal, and we did it for AFCEA, the Armed Forces Communications Engineering Association, on cloud security lessons learned. We came up with 3 points, 3 primary points in the paper, and they're summarized here. The first myth about cloud computing is that individuals think of it as this magical thing that data goes in and then it comes out on the other side of the world and they have no clue how it happened in the middle. It's like a big fog. And because they actually can't see what's happening inside the cloud, they don't have trust for what's happening inside the cloud. If they can't put their arms physically around their data or physically around their servers at any time, they've lost the trust. The second one is this feels like a new version of outsourcing, where, especially in the public cloud space, whenever I give my information to a public cloud provider, they tell me what flavor of cloud I'm going to get. They've taken control. And as a customer, I can't dictate what I want, where I want it, and how I want it, and therefore I feel like it's less secure. And then finally, when they're looking at their workforce, our IT workforce and many IT workforces, regardless of the industry that you're in, they're overtaxed, they're overburdened, they're overworked. They're facing security threats on a constant basis. And if this cloud thing that they're supposed to be managing changes all the time because it's dynamic, it's elastic, it's on demand, There's a big fear that the IT workforce simply won't be able to keep up with that, and you will have breaches coming at you from every direction, and it's just because your IT workforce is overloaded, and so that creates yet another kind of fear and a kind of myth. What I think actually is true is that cloud can be more secure, and here are the 3 ways that I would recommend that you can use cloud to overcome those 3 myths. The first one is visibility. With the cloud, you have a lot of sensor points throughout your entire IT architecture. And you can use the data from all those sensor points. You can use data from your applications, data from your wireless devices, data from your network, your switches, your routers, your firewalls, and so forth. And you can put all that sensor data together and put a nice dashboard on top of it and actually be able to see things happening in your infrastructure that heretofore you could not see. Prior to cloud computing, they were dispersed either around your organization, generally even dispersed around the vendors that you were using, and now we are seeing great products emerge that show you everything very, very quickly. And you will see the security breaches before they happen, as they're happening, and be able to recover from them quickly once they've happened. Second way to overcome the myth of cloud security is through collaboration. I mentioned the paper that Jamie DeSantis and I did. It was a demonstration of a federal and a private partnership. We came together, me as a federal CIO, her as the president of a company, and wrote a paper that increased the collaboration, and that was just representative of what we have seen all over the place. There are more and more partnerships between public and private. There are more products being developed as a result. There's more understanding of breaches and a sharing of breaches through some traditional means like the US CERT out of the Homeland Security with private industry, and even in sort of non-traditional ways between the provider of your cloud services and you as the buyer of the cloud services and understanding what's happening in that space. Finally, the third area is about your workforce. There is a myth that your workforce is overloaded. What actually is happening is that a workforce is being created that is a nice blend of IT and IA. IT and information assurance, or information security, whichever term you like to use. What we are discovering is that the workforce that has to keep up with these security breaches doesn't look like yesterday's straight IT workforce. It also doesn't look like yesterday's InfoSec workforce. It looks like a future workforce where everyone is cyber conscious constantly and paying attention. One of the reasons that the federal agencies have moved so much to private clouds is the security risk. A lot of our data is classified, and quite frankly, we're just not comfortable putting out there in a public space. We share the concerns that many have about your data moving around the world and you not having better control of where it is. So we've all moved, or we are moving to private cloud concepts. Sometimes that private cloud is built with your own IT people. Sometimes that private cloud is built with a vendor, but it's walled off from their other public cloud offerings. Recently had some time with the financial sector. They too are doing private cloud. So while it started as a phenomena for federal government or classified information, it is now becoming an increasing phenomena for anyone who has data, information, intellectual property that they really, really need to protect. Back on the federal space, the DHS CIO has come out and he has said he has an aggressive stance on cloud. He's doing both private and public cloud. Public cloud for him is that he has citizen services. As the Department of Homeland Security, we depend on them to know a lot and to do a lot for us as citizens. And so that information that should be shared publicly, they will put out there in their public cloud offerings. DHS also has a lot of sensitive information. They'll keep that information in their private clouds. Likewise, DoD is looking at cloud. They're also doing a lot of private cloud. One of the biggest reasons that they're moving into cloud is that they have a global workforce that they must support with the most up-to-date and accurate information 24/7. The best way for them to get that information in the hands of a warfighter is to that warfighter's smart device. That warfighter might be in the middle of the desert, might be in a tank, might be somewhere else. He actually doesn't have time to run into a skiff or a fixed facility to get what he needs. And so DoD is using cloud to deliver out that information to the warfighter. This was in here from the other day. We actually did a briefing yesterday. If you want to learn more about cloud security, I'll send you to 2 places. Number 1, we just did a session, a cloud panel session that you can find up on the web, I'm sure, at some point. You can also go to cloudnetworkofwomen.com. It was sponsored by Cloud Now, and you can see what we talked about there. And then finally, the other place where you can go is to the AFCEA website, the AFCEA Cyber Committee, which is the committee that sponsored the joint paper that Jamie Dos Santos and I worked on, and you can see a copy of the paper up there. You can also just go to the Jill Singer blog site and find a copy of the paper. So I'd invite you to look there for more about security. So let's remember now the 3 big issues from the survey in September 2011 about cloud fears. They were security, culture, and budget. So we're going to move from security now into culture. Here are some comments, mostly out of, or actually all out of the federal space, about the cultural impact of cloud computing. There is one. There is a cultural impact in particular to your IT workforce and to your IT processes. If you don't tackle the cultural impact and you only focus on the technologies associated with cloud, you're not going to have a successful transition. You'll probably end up down in that trough of disillusionment faster than you ever thought. So you really need to focus on the cultural impacts of the workforce. A couple of folks have said that it's truly transformative to the IT business itself. Now that's not just about being faster, better, and cheaper and safer. It's also about how they learn to take advantage of faster and better as an IT workforce unit. Vivek Kundra, the former federal CIO, likened it to the internet and said that this is just as disruptive as the internet was in all of our daily lives. I think that indicates that we have yet to see all of the cultural impacts to our workforce as IT professionals, as well as to us as just human beings. Gartner did its cloud computing outlook for 2011. I love this picture. It tells you that if you do cloud right, everybody is going to be happy, smiling, and loving their lives. It tells you that there are 3 key features that the IT unit is going to get from it. They're going to get smaller, shorter projects. And actually, for an IT person, that generally means they'll get more and a variety of work throughout the year. They can use open source, lower cost tools, saves money for everybody. And you'll have younger talent that can work with these new tools. So this is the world we all want, these really happy people that are out there saying, yes, I love my job and I can't wait to come to work tomorrow. You're not going to get it just from the technology. Here are some of the mistakes that you need to make sure you avoid as you're moving into cloud computing so that you can have a culture that looks more like the smiley, shiny faces. Don't try to sell to your workforce or to your executives or to your partners that cloud is for everything. Cloud isn't for everything. It is the next generation of IT architecture, but some things are going to more easily move into cloud than others. If you have a huge ERP system that you spent millions of dollars and years developing, that's probably not the first thing you want to try to move into the cloud. Some things staying in the legacy environment will be the better choice for your company. I've already covered the underestimation of the culture change. I still have some slides to walk you through on that, but don't underestimate that. Don't, again, just think that it's simple enough to put the technology in and everything will be fine. And also make sure while you're moving into cloud computing that you don't end up with a bunch of little mini clouds. Because all the server huggers really did was turn their closet into a little mini cloud, and you still have a bunch of stovepipes and a bunch of legacy. Remember when I talked about security and the visibility? If all of those are little mini clouds and they're not connected to your network operations center, you're not going to have the visibility that you need to see the breaches in advance or to see the performance issues that you have. So you have to be very careful to make sure your entire unit is moving forward in a joint fashion and not moving forward in a bunch of stovepipes. Because if you're not careful with cloud computing, you're going to end up with something like this instead of the smiling faces that you wanted. So, you know, you got a guy down scratching his head going, what the heck is this thing that's happening? You've got a guy who's looking towards the old IT architecture, which he loves so much, and he just wants it to come back. The deer in the headlights, number 3 on the list. The deer in the headlights, they are going, what am I supposed to do with this? And then I think the last guy is sort of the guy who's like, can't I just retire now because I really don't want to go through yet another transformation? So it really is important that you don't have this, that instead you have that Gartner picture of people who really love their jobs and know how to do what they want to do. Terminology in cloud culture is also very important. This obviously is a takeoff Got Milk. So Got Milk slogan works, and it works for a very simple reason. We all know what milk is, right? And so that works. Got Cloud doesn't really work so well because of all these terms and more that are thrown at your executives, thrown at your IT department, thrown at you on a regular basis. And there are different definitions that people use. I was walking around on the floor the other day and we were talking about infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and how even some vendors use them in the non-pure way that NIST would recommend, and so it's confusing. So when you're talking to your executives, I wouldn't recommend that you use any of these terms really on this slide, that you try to narrow it down. And when you're talking to your engineers, you need to be more precise. And when you're talking to your architects, you also need to be more precise. So I'm going to give you 3 options that you might use in talking to your company about cloud. The first one is from NIST. This is a standard NIST chart. The way that I use it with our executives is I just turn it into Marketing 101, feature and benefit. I talk to them about the characteristics of cloud computing as a feature, and then I describe to them the benefit that we will get in our mission space by taking on that feature. So when you say to them that it's multi-tenancy or it's rapid elasticity, you have to describe why they care about that and why it's important to them. The service types, I generally don't discuss with them. This just came straight from a NIST model. And then I do actually talk to them about the deployment models. First of all, you have to educate them on what the versions are. And once again, you go to feature benefit. And you tell them why, for example, in my space, why I'm most interested in a private cloud. And then I'm going to have a community cloud with the intelligence community, which will look like a hybrid to me. But you have to spend time with your executives, but at a very high level, and keeping it in feature benefit. That's not going to work, though, for your enterprise systems engineers. It's not going to work for your enterprise architects. To them, that's too high level. It doesn't give them enough information. So NIST actually just came out with a new picture that I think is a great reference architecture that we've already used with our systems engineers and with our enterprise architects to talk to them about all of the capabilities that are in a cloud and the way that you would set it up from an architectural view. So when you're talking to those folks, use a picture like this and walk them through it. Then there's one more view of terminology that I would recommend you use, and it looks something more like this. If you're talking to people who are IT engineers, network engineers, developers, etc., this is the world that they want to live in. They don't want to live in a world that has a bunch of puffy white clouds drawn on a slide. They want to see that you know at some point this comes down to real transport, whether it is fiber transport or satellite transport or Wi-Fi or whatever it is, that you understand it. They want to know that you understand the access devices are all kinds of things that are in the hands of the users. And they want to know that you understand it comes down to firewalls and routers and switches and servers and storage and so forth. So this is the picture that we have used more often with our technical folks. And they end up shaking their head saying, okay, you get it. You get that this thing isn't just some puffy white cloud that I can go get, especially if you're going to do a private cloud implementation. So the terminology really is very important when you're talking to your teams. Let's do a quick summary on culture about people, process, and technology. So for the people, I've already told you that one of the things we learned in the ASTIO white paper is that a new generation of IT professionals is needed. Now, before the universities start pumping them out, this one that's a blend between IT and information security, you're going to have to do that yourselves. You're going to have to do some mentoring and put some different kinds of teams together so that they begin to blend those two skills. The automated tools that your workforce is going to need will actually allow them to have time to do deeper analysis on their capabilities, and especially on the cyber front. If they can spend time analyzing the cyber data coming at them, as opposed to spending all their time engineering the next generation of patches to go put on a heterogeneous environment, that will give you increased capability and better security for your organization. And finally, if you do this right, cloud computing should take less resources out of your IT department. That's not jobs lost. That's actually your ability to repurpose those people to go do all the other things you haven't yet been able to do because you don't have enough resources to do it. You know, in our world, there's never a shortage of the job jar that people want out of IT, but there's always a shortage of available people to go do that with the right skill sets. This gives you a chance to repurpose those people into the things that you need most for the future. On process, this is actually really what it looks like at the NRO. You see the Swiss Army knife on the current NRO, where it is this huge Swiss Army knife because we have purpose-built a new tool for everything we need to do. You couldn't carry this knife around. You sure couldn't get through TSA. It's expensive to have a knife like that because, yet again, every time we want to do something else, we forget that there's already a tool on that knife and we build yet another one. So it is a legacy of stovepipes all over the place. It takes us a very long time to get something done through this particular environment because we build everything from scratch and we build it in one big vertical. It's months. 6 to 18 months on this slide is actually 6 months would be great. It's a little bit more like 18 months. That actually becomes very expensive as well. One of the benefits that we see of moving to the cloud is that we can have a much smaller, much capable Swiss Army knife that has a few tools. We will do ruthless and rigorous standardization, which some will say throws out the innovation. I completely disagree. Give them a box, give them some standards, and let them on the application layer be as innovative as they want to be, a little bit like the App Store model. We will be able to give them, our goal is to give them a dev test environment within a couple of days, and then to be able to migrate them from dev test into production in no more than 6 weeks, and have them operating in under 2 months, if that's how fast they can go, and give them an environment that is fully managed for the capabilities that they want. You can have this too if you don't already. I liken this to what Agile development did to Waterfall when it came around. Again, much of it is about changing the process inside your organization and changing the culture. When you move from this current state to the future state, think about all the people that spend time daily in hours and hours of ERB meetings or CCB meetings or CMB meetings. That can't happen anymore when you move to the future. Changes to the environment have to go through underneath the surface, never affecting the actual delivery on top of the surface, and it has to be fast. You're no longer paying people by the pound of paper to do an engineering change. You're trying to keep it standard, keep it rigorous underneath, migrate it without impact to everyone else, and let those people who used to sit in ERBs go do something more productive with their time. Now, on the technology side, a bunch of ways that you can get there from technology. I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. When you're looking at what you want to move to cloud from your legacy environment, remember I said don't pick your ERP. That's probably hard, expensive, and just could engender a lot of ill will around your organization. Instead, pick some quick, easy wins and start with that. Pick something brand new, a greenfield approach, and let them march into the cloud first. But go to a sweet spot and have some success before you move to the harder things. That will also give you time to determine if those harder things are ever going to be worth it in moving them into the cloud. On the managing risk, I love this picture because what we are doing with cloud in our environment, we have to go through the top secret certification and accreditation process to stand up a capability. It's a security-based process to make sure that we're managing our risks appropriately. We can now, with cloud, separate the ISP layer from the ASP layer, and we can run our cloud through its own CNA process, certification and accreditation process, get that thing certified and approved to operate, and allow then the applications to just do the changes and the CNA process about the application. Today, the entire vertical has to go through the CNA process every single time. That takes a lot of time and a lot of talent by really smart folks, but we need to be able to move faster, and we can manage our risk differently when we move to cloud computing. Finally, on enabling access on this slide, I actually don't think you get to this world of consumerized IT in the workplace without cloud. You need to be able to serve up that data wherever that person is, on whatever device they have, but in a very secure manner. You're not going to use your traditional legacy IT environment to do that. You really need a cloud environment, content distribution network, and so forth to put it out there in a rapid manner to give the end user the performance that they want and to make sure you're giving them the most accurate and best data that's available. So the third thing on the 2011, the September survey, it was security, culture, and then cost. This slide represents some of the things that we've seen on cost. And they come from people who are mostly aligned to the federal space. I think that their comments, however, are apropos to all of us. Lockheed Martin rightfully said the cost savings you get out of cloud computing is in the labor pool. If you're anything like me, when I look at the portfolio of spend for IT at the NRO and in my previous position at CIA, same kind of portfolio spend, 70 to 80% of our IT spend is on labor. Only about 20 to 25% is on CapEx. And so if you can't drive down the labor costs, you're not going to realize the savings. General Spano out of the Air Force also said that if you're actually in this only to save money, you're going to fail. I think what he was trying to tell his folks is that there is an investment needed up front in order to save money on the back end. And so if you walk into it thinking you can shave your IT budget in half just because you move to cloud computing, you've actually missed the costs of cultural change. You've missed the costs of retooling your workforce and so forth. So his point was, don't walk into cloud just because you want to save money. That generally pertains to those of us who are in the private cloud space. You might be able to save money in the public cloud space. And then Booz Allen recently came up with sort of a balanced view on cost savings, that scale really is important. So when you move to a private cloud, you have to be willing to sacrifice some of the cost savings that you might see in a public cloud. Because in a public cloud, they can over-provision if they want, but they can also pick up a set of customers that covers a 24/7 global footprint so that some want heavy processing in the middle of the night for the East Coast, and some want heavy processing in the middle of the day on the East Coast. And that allows them to get greatest utilization of their capital. When you do a private cloud, that generally doesn't happen unless your organization truly has a global footprint and can bring that same nighttime and daytime processing. For us, what we will see is that the bulk of our processing is happening on the US time zones, so it's still going to be heavy in the day. We don't have a lot going on in the middle of the night in our other locations that is going to give us great utilization. All right, fine, we'll take that. We'll take that bit of a cost hit because we still have saved a lot of money overall in power, space, cooling, utilization, et cetera, for cloud computing. All right, so now I want to tell you very quickly what we're doing at the NRO to move into the space in a little bit more specificity. We think we're on the West Coast. So did you guys hear about that 90-foot wave off Venezuela or something? I'm not sure where it was. This is clearly not a 90-foot wave, and I'm hoping cloud computing is not a 90-foot wave. But in order to actually get on the wave of change for cloud computing, you have to catch that wave at exactly the right point. This is the right point. He's going to catch this wave. He's going to have a terrific ride. It'll be great. But what if you're here and you want to try and catch it? Well, think about that from your organization's perspective, because this gentleman paddled past the wave. He is not going to catch that wave. He missed it. He'll be waiting for the next one. In essence, he'll be waiting for the next generation of IT architecture, whatever that might be. Or the gentleman here. He's a little bit behind the curve. He has to get through this wave, again, hope for another one, and hope that he actually doesn't get caught up in the one that's coming right at him. What you can't see as well on this one is that this is a guy with a boogie board. Doesn't even have a surfboard. And so he's probably not going to make it. So when you look at it, think about your organization and determine where you are right now. You can recover from any of these spots that say not here, but it is through careful planning and orchestration that you will recover. So what if this is you? For some of you, you think you're right in the middle of cloud computing and you think you're in a perfect spot. Well, this has two choices. Two things will happen, at least two. Maybe there are more than two. One is a perfect ride. There's going to be this perfect tube, and he's going to have the ride of his life, and it's going to be just great. The other is a slight misstep or a slight change in that waveform is going to have him eating sand off the ocean floor. So just because you think you're in a perfect cloud computing spot doesn't mean that you can stop paddling or stop paying attention or stop moving around on that board and balancing yourself. You have to constantly be doing that because this space is changing. The vendors on the floor show us every time their tools are changing and what they're doing is changing, and so you have to keep paying attention. But it could be the ride of your life. Here is a generic roadmap for cloud computing. I'm not telling you that this is going to get you that perfect ride on the wave or you're going to end up in the tube, but it does show you some things you really need to think about. And what is predominantly important when you look at these steps, this roadmap for cloud computing, is that there's work to do to get there. You don't just take your credit card and go buy AWS or Rackspace or your favorite provider and think, okay, I'm done, I got my cloud. There's a lot of thinking you need to do up front and a lot of executing that has to happen inside your own space in order for this to truly be successful. At the NRO, we spent about 18 months looking at our IT strategy and developing our roadmap for how we would move to cloud computing. I will show you on the next slide that it is a multi-year process for us. It is not an overnight process. We decided that we would do private first. That was a pretty easy decision that we would keep it inside the NRO space and do private cloud first. But then we're going to quickly move to hybrid. Now for us, hybrid means an intelligence community cloud. It doesn't really mean a public cloud. It means something that the intelligence community will come together and we will keep some things in our private space that are unique to the NRO's mission that other people don't have. And then we'll have things in the shared space with the rest of the intelligence community. So we all do a common desktop. Well, that should be in the shared community cloud that we have. But nobody really does mission processing of round waves and squiggly waves in the sky like we do, and so that probably would be in our private space. We're going to do infrastructure and platform as services first, and then we'll move up the stack to software as services. We're using a four-pronged approach: test it, prove it, use it, exploit it. We picked those verbs very purposefully. We also convinced our leadership that we needed to do this as a greenfield. There's no migrating the current legacy baseline into cloud right now. We're building it from scratch. We're building it with new equipment, new software, etc. We had some pilots going on for the past year, and we also picked those pilots very purposefully. We have a data cloud pilot, so we could watch data, because big data, smart data is important to us. We had a commodity cloud going on, so we could know more about what of our commodity type stuff would fit in there easily. We had a high performance cloud going on, because a lot of what we need to do is GPU based as opposed to CPU based. And we needed to know up front what the limitations were of the traditional cloud offerings in a GPU-like world. We're currently in the prove it phase. And we're standing up two different clouds, one for our mission side and one for our business side, our business admin support and enterprise side. Then we'll move up to the use it and the exploit it. Each time checking ourselves to make sure we haven't tried to do cloud for everything, to make sure that we have purposefully managed what we're putting into the cloud, and we can back away if we find something that doesn't work in the cloud. Two big things about this slide. For many people, it is ridiculously rapid. You'll note that it says 2011 to 2017. Some of our organizations who have millions of lines of code are like, wow, I cannot get there that fast. I don't know that my code's going to virtualize. I don't know that I can get it into an environment. I don't have a services-based applications baseline right now. I don't know that I can do it in 6 years. So for them, it really is a ridiculously rapid approach. For many others who come to places like this and see other corporations, they're like, wow, that is shockingly slow. That will take us forever to get there, and how will we ever reap the benefits of it? You're going to wrestle with that in your own organizations. And remember, there will be two sides to that coin. Some who want to go slower and some who want to go faster. What we tried to put out for them was a way that they could move at the speed of their choosing that met their mission's needs. So put it up and then grow it over time. With that, I want to do just a quick summary. If you had any guess, obviously cloud computing is here. And if you thought the expo floor here wasn't quite big enough, I suspect the expo floor in June in New York City will be bigger, and then here again next November it will as well, and it will continue to show us that this definitely is here and it's for real. You have some obstacles that you need to overcome. The three biggest ones that are out there right now are security, culture, and cost expectations or savings expectations. Think about what you want to do before you start getting into the water. All around the world, everybody can surf. There's a place where you can learn to surf. It's generally a good idea if you know how to swim first. But you need to think about what you want to do when you get out there in the water, because there is a point when you're learning to surf where it's just you and that board in the water, and make sure you're a little bit ready for it. So have a roadmap. Spend time with your organization thinking about how you want to get there. We're obviously there in the federal government. Reminder, we do have a cloud first policy, which means that our question is, we must say, why not cloud first? And then when we can answer the why not on cloud, then we can move to a legacy or some other stovepiped environment if that's necessary. And finally, I just leave you with one thing. In order to surf, you have to paddle. And so if you're not on the water and you're not paddling yet, go ahead, get in and start paddling. With that, thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope you guys enjoyed the conference.
Thank you, Jill. I'm tempted to say we should take just one question so that someone can go home and say, you know, I was just asking the CIO of the NRO the other day, and it's this gentleman.
Thank you so much.
You won a grand prize.
I'm
Don't know what it is, but
my company is Nanova Corporation. I just wanted to know your focus on the GPU-based computing, where it is moving. Where in the cloud the GPU fits in, because if it is on the cloud, then you need a lot of bandwidth, and then if it is in the client, then how do you manage it from the cloud? So what's the vision with GPU on that?
What we found,
Thank you.
Yeah, what we found when we were doing a GPU-based cloud is that we actually had to build our own cloud controller. We had to build our own resource manager for the cloud. There wasn't a product out there when we started on this that we could just rapidly and readily pick up and put into the space. There's no BMC or OpenStack product that we could use. And that will be a challenge, because that means it's code that we have to continue to maintain. It truly is. It's built by a vendor, but it's a government, it's a GOTS product. And so if GPU is going to be successful in the cloud, someone's going to have to overcome that and put out some real commercial products that can handle it. It's one school of thought. The other is that there are a lot of folks, a lot of really smart folks, telling me that CPUs are going to catch up and you don't even need those GPUs in the future. Intel is working on some things, and others are as well, where the GPUs will be out of the environment, and you'll have CPUs capable of doing that kind of processing, and then you can lay the regular traditional cloud computing controlling tools, resource managers on top of it. So, from a bandwidth perspective, we're used to running a lot of big data around the world, so we're okay with that. What we do in that GPU cloud is not something we're going to serve up to a handheld. It's not going to work in that kind of consumer-like environment. So hopefully that helps.
Okay,
Great.
I know you've all got to get to technical sessions. So Jill, I know, has very kindly promised to step sort of to somewhere where you can follow her. But let's, again, just thank Jill Singer, CIO of the NRO.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a great...